And put this all you.
Perfect. I just want to get a mic check. We're all good here, I assume?
Amazing.
Beautiful. All right, guys. So I'm very excited to give this message. So it's actually funny when I got asked to give this talk, whenever people ask to speak at like a conference or like at a breakout or something like that, I always find that one of my strengths when it comes to not just selling, but actually teaching, one of my best things is simply teaching people how to sell more block sets, because there's a lot of stuff that you guys have heard. I'm sure a lot of information here today. You're going to take bits and pieces and utilize it for your push week. But here's the really simple way to put it for what you're about to hear. Selling sets will help you hit your goals faster. Simple as pie. So here's what I mean by that is, some of you guys have been around for like a week. Some of you guys have been around for a few months. A lot of you guys have started at different time ranges in there. In your couple of days of training, they only get to teach you really like the main fundamentals of the job. And there's so much fundamentals they need to teach you. They got to teach you make a schedule. They got to teach you how to do the demo. They got to teach you how to get recommendations. They got to teach you how to drop down. So they give you like a little bit of sprinkle of a little bit of everything. So what I'm here today is not how to teach you your whole job. My job is just to really focus in on and really hone in on what it really takes to sell more block sets. So here's a couple of things I want to make sure punch from the get-go. We got 3 things we're going to be talking about here today, just because this is simply one of my strengths as a sales rep personally. The longer I've sold Cutco and the more Cutco I've sold, I've realized how simpler and simpler it gets when it comes to selling sets. And so there's really comes down to 3 points we're going to talk about. Number 1, we're going to re-talk about building value. I'm sure that probably sounds very familiar from your couple of days of training, but building value, a better way to view it as is just building price expectation. I'm going to go over some stuff today that's going to help you guys build price expectations. So that way at the end of your demo, your customer gets that sense of relief saying, oh, that's not as bad as I thought it was. A customer is never going to say, oh, that's cheap, because Cutco is not a cheap product. That's not going to happen. But what will happen if you do it the right way at the end of the demo, when you actually show them the price of the homemaker, then they're going to have that sense of relief of that's not as bad as I thought it would be. And so we'll go into all that here shortly. Number 2 thing we're going to talk about is the names and uses. I think a lot of people have the misconception that buying Cutco just really comes down to the price. Now, obviously, it's not cheap and people are going to buy different levels of Cutco. But one of the things that a lot of people tend to overlook, for example, and you can ask yourself this too, because there's kind of a lot of people on today, is if you've ever gone to a demo before where you expected them to buy more than what they actually did. Usually if they have the means to buy something bigger, but they buy something smaller, means that there's something happened in our demo, either something we said incorrectly or something we didn't say at all, that caused people to not really feel the need or the desire to buy necessarily a bigger set. For example, my number 1 person on my list, I started with Cutco in 2009, by the way, and I wasn't a very strong starter when I first started in this business. But one story I'll always remember is it took me over a year to book my number 1 person on my list. They're very quality, they have a good amount of money, they cook all the time, and they love me to death. It's like the perfect storm, right? But people like that tend to be very busy with their schedules. Eventually I booked them for a demo. I was so confident that I was going to sell a big set that I went over to the house and I did the demo, but I didn't really do the demo. I was overconfident to a fault, almost cocky basically, because I just assumed they liked me, they had money, and they cook. I'm just going to walk into an ultimate sale. I'm going to walk into a homemaker sale. And it was such a rookie mistake that I made. By the time the demo was over, I skipped through a lot of the features and benefits. I skipped through a lot of the names and uses, just assuming they were going to buy it. And by the time I even flipped the page and I showed them the homemaker, keep in mind, they didn't know how much a homemaker was yet. All I had to do was flip the page, and the first words I always remember out of the wife's mouth was, oh my gosh, Dante, that's a big set of knives. I don't think I need even half of that stuff. And immediately when she said that, I just went, and I wanted to blow my brains out, because this was my big person that I wanted to see for a long time. But guys, it was my own fault. I know now that she would have bought more knives if I would have just done the demo the right way. So the reason why I bring this up to you guys, it's not necessarily always the money. It's the value of what comes in the sets. People have money to spend, but they're only going to spend it on stuff that they want or desire. And so you really got to master your names and uses. And that's something I feel like really gets overlooked a lot, either in training or advanced training, or just in your time being a new rep as well. So we'll go into all that. And then the third thing we'll talk about at the end is remembering that rapport is key. People that when they're buying Cutco the first time, it's always the hardest. The reason why it's the hardest because they're not used to spending this much on a good set of knives in the past. So this is their first opportunity where they're going to buy a good set of knives that they'll have for a long time. I'm not going to preach to you all the stuff and why Cutco is worth it. You guys have heard all that stuff by now. But the thing I want you guys to always remember is simply this, is that rapport is key to closing bigger sets. If they like you and they like Cutco, then they're going to feel more confident to buy bigger things. Guys, the reality is Cutco is a good enough product to where it will sell itself in pieces. Homemaker sets typically don't sell themselves. Sometimes you just walk into a house, do a demo, they know what Cutco is, and they already know they want to buy it. That's not what this is for. This is for the other 90% of your customers that have never heard of Cutco, that are seeing it for the first time. And it's your job to make sure to nail the main points of your demo. So that way, when you do get to the homemaker, if they have the means to buy it and they want to buy it and they like you, then they feel confident making that purchase. If you get really good at this, people that would have bought starter sets from you will now buy homemakers and galleys. People that would have normally been easy homemakers might buy bigger sets now too. People that would have bought pieces will now buy smaller, like 5-piece specials and things of that nature. So we're gonna go into all this here in pretty deep detail. I'm assuming we'll have time for a little bit of Q&A at the end, but I'm just gonna dive right through it. So if you have questions, we'll open it up at the end. So let's get into it. First main point here on building value, AKA building price expectation. Here's the reality. I've been doing this for a long time. And the main thing I always try to remember is these main points. Number one point I have down here under building value is that you have to make Cutco sound super expensive. I'm sure you guys have heard that a lot, but let's dive a little deeper into what that means. If you guys go into a store, this is non-Cutco related. Let's say that you want to go buy this product at the mall somewhere. You get in your car, you drive over to the mall, you fight through traffic and everything. You park, you go to the store, you look through the aisles and you find that product and you take it off the shelf. Let's say that this whole time up to that point before you grab it, you're expecting to spend about $100 on this product. Let's say you go through this whole process, you find it, and it's only $40 instead of $100. Are you going to be less excited or probably more excited to buy this product now? Obviously more excited. You guys are smart like that. But the thing is that it's less than what you're expecting. So it's very easy to make that decision that I want to buy it. Everyone following so far? Now let's flip it around a little bit. So let's say that you go through the same steps and you go to the store and you're expecting to spend $100, but then you see it's $250. Is there an absolute guarantee you're going to buy that product now? There's not a guarantee. Why? Because it's more than double what you're expecting. Here's the point that I want to make with you guys. The main reason why it's important to build value and to make sure to use every single opportunity you can to build price expectation. The worst thing that can happen on a demo is that you do everything right, but you hit the main, or you forget to hit the main value points. And then you get to the homemaker page and you show them it's $1,326. But they were expecting around $500 or $600, and then they see it's $1,300. It's twice as much as what they're expecting. Is there a good chance that you're going to sell that homemaker now? Good luck. Probably not. Now, if they expect it the other way and they expect it's $2,000 or maybe even $3,000, and they see it's about half the price of what they're expecting, do you have a better chance of selling that homemaker now? Of course. By the way, nothing's guaranteed. I've been doing this for a while too. No matter how good we are, like you guys know that I work on the events team. I do a lot of shows and a lot of our top people work shows and stuff. You guys will learn all about that here pretty soon in more detail. But the point I want to make with you guys is we don't sell homemakers to every single customer we talk to. We do sell a lot of sets when the opportunities present themselves. But the point is that our goal is to build as much price expectation as possible in the shortest period of time, because whenever we do get to that pricing, we want them to have that, oh, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Everyone's going to see the quality of Cutco. It's never a question of that. It's all a question on, does the money make sense? And the way that the money makes sense is if the value outweighs the price. And value is really just price expectation. So here's a couple of things for you. There's a section in your demo called the features and benefits, correct? Where they talk about the steel, the double D edge, the handle, the guarantee, and all that good stuff. One thing that used to be in our manuals, our scripts, back when I first started, which I thought was so great. I always make sure to make this a point with all the reps doing their demos their first year, is that every single time I would mention a feature or benefit, I was taught the concept of saying, now this makes Cutco more expensive, but it's worth it because of blank, blank, and blank. I've heard it's been taken out of the script. I love the script and I think it's awesome and you should follow it word for word. This is one little tidbit that I would just mix in there just because I know how much of an impact it makes with price expectation. So it'll kind of sound like this. So Mrs. Jones, the steel grade that we use is actually a 448 grade steel. It's a mix between high carbon stainless, excuse me. It's a mix of high carbon and stainless steel mixed together. It's like a surgical grade steel. Now this makes Cutco a lot more expensive, but it's worth it because blank, 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 blank. Everything that your manual says, everything your script says is everything that I say. The only difference is I pre-frame it by saying this makes Cutco more expensive, but it's worth it because everything my manual tells me to say.
And,
now, by the way, you don't just...
Dante, I can tell you this and why it's out, just so you're aware, is they don't do actual features and benefits anymore. The video does. So there's actually nothing. So what I was teaching before and what you guys can do is right after the video, be like, oh, did you notice the guarantee? Yeah, it costs more, but it's worth it because people buy it once, have it every day, use it forever. And that steel you saw, did you see how they cut the rope? That edge, like it's a specific edge to Cutco called the double D edge, and it costs more to have that, but it's awesome because it cuts forward, back, and down, and it protects your knives and it stays sharp for 10 to 15 years. And that's you like we talked about this before with SC1, but like you're kind of recapping stuff they saw in the video because sometimes they miss it, and you want to make sure they understand why Cutco is so good and why it costs what it does. So that's huge. So I just wanted to make that known because they don't have it in their manual.
Yeah.
It's something we actually are adding so that customers know more about it.
By the way, she nailed it right on the head there, because after you guys do that video, it is important to highlight the main things on, the steel grade they were talking about. It makes it a lot more expensive, but it's worth it because all those reasons they said, and making sure that you double down on that and emphasize it. And the thing is, guys, you don't just say it one time and never come back to it. You need to be a broken record in this section. The whole purpose of features and benefits is to keep stacking price expectation. Every time I talk about the handle, the forever guarantee, the double D edge, all those the nickel silver rivets, the full tank construction, the fact that it's American made and all that kind of good stuff, those are all easy reasons to say it makes it more expensive, but it's worth it because all those reasons. So making sure you do that. Another note I have here is having 100% product conviction personally. So this is something that I will just do as a group question here. You don't obviously have to unmute yourself or anything. I just want to see your hands. So I'm going to switch gears here. I'm going to go to gallery view so I can see you guys a little bit better. I need both of your hands for right now though, so make sure those are ready. On a scale of 1 to 10, and be totally honest with yourself. Like, it's all good. We're all friends here, and this is going to help me a lot with my next part of my message. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you believe that Cutco is worth it? We know it's expensive. I'm not worried about that. I'm on a scale of 1 to 10. How much do you believe that Cutco is worth the money that you pay for it? By the way, if you're a 10, awesome. If you're a 5, that's okay. If you're a 7, that's cool too. I just kind of hold them up for a second because there's a lot of you guys. I just want to get a feel of the room real quick. So that's very good. I see a lot of 10s. I can see why you guys are on that call today. I see some of you guys are not raising your hands, so I'm going to virtually smack you guys for you guys that aren't doing that. I got my eyes on all of y'all. See, even the person that's driving is doing it. All right, there we go. So, all right, get your hands back on the wheel. So with that being said, as we go through this, here's what I'm talking about. If you're a 10 right now, that's awesome. I'm not really talking to you for the next couple seconds. I'm preaching to the choir. But for you guys that are 9 or below, I would just ask you this question. Why is Cutco not worth it? And be very honest with yourself. Why is Cutco not worth it? Because you're not a 10, you're a 9 or below, so there's got to be a reason why, right? The reason why I asked this question is when I was a new rep, I sold a lot of pieces. I sold a galley set to my mom and my stepdad, and that's like the only set I sold like my first month and a half on the job. I sold a lot of pieces. I did demos, but I really wasn't that good. I just didn't have it when I was brand new, and that's okay. Some people start slow. But I want to bring this up because eventually I got time with who was my assistant manager at the time, and he sat down with me and did a one-on-one PC. And he went through my demo. He fixed a couple things I was doing wrong. And at the end of it, he asked me that same question. He's like, how much do you believe Cutco's worth it? And I told him, probably like a 7, something like that, 7.5. And he's like, okay, why is Cutco not worth it? And I thought that was a really interesting way to ask that because I didn't really have a good answer for him. I couldn't really think of a whole lot. And it really put things in perspective for me. And that from that point forward, after he fixed my demo and he got me thinking differently, I started selling more sets. It's actually funny. My first homemaker I sold the very next week, and it was to a referral, someone I didn't know. And I went in and did the demo. I was sweaty as hell whenever I wrote up that first homemaker order. I'm sure most of you guys were when you sell your first homemaker. But the idea is making sure you be very honest with yourself. Like, hey, do you have that product conviction? Because if you don't, you need to get it. The easiest way to get it, by the way, is to get a Cutco knife and start cutting with it. That way you guys know. Some of you guys grew up with Cutco. Like some of your parents probably have Cutco that's older than you are, so you already know it's worth it. But if you're not at that product conviction level, you got to work on getting there. And we'll definitely get to you there at some point. Couple things here. Last thing on building value is checking both the boxes. When it comes to buying sets, guys, and selling sets in general, it really just have to check 2 main boxes. It's the money and the knives, meaning that does the money make sense? And am I going to use the knives that are in that set? It's not a question on liking Cutco. It's not a question on the quality of Cutco. We're not worried about any of that stuff. It really just comes down to, we know that 99% of people, it's not 100, 99% of people will want to buy Cutco when they see the demo. Now, Cutco's not cheap, so people will buy different levels of it, obviously. But if the money makes sense and they're going to use most of the knives in the set and they like it and they're going to use it, I can't think of a lot of reasons why they would probably not buy it. Some people, it's a galley. Some people, it's a big set. Some people, it's a starter set. Guys, this morning I had a demo with a customer of mine from like 5 years ago, and it was like a super easy upgrade. You know, they bought a homemaker from me, and I still remember they were a very hard homemaker to sell, but they ended up doing it. And then I went to go to their house this morning, and they bought an upgrade. That's awesome. It's like 1600 CPO. And so the thing I want to make sure you guys know is it wasn't very hard because the first time buying Cutco is the hardest. It was really hard for her to buy that homemaker because she's never spent that money on good knives before. But after 5 years owning it, the second time I saw her, she spent more money and she did it faster because she owns it. Once you own Cutco, it makes sense. If you don't have Cutco, you got to make sure to hit all the main points. If the money makes sense and they're going to use the knives, that's how you're going to sell a lot more sets. So let's kind of go into our next part here. Point number 2, the names and uses. So we're going to get away from the money aspect for a second. I'm going to ask you kind of a similar question as before, meaning that you need to believe in what's included in each of the sets. So let's not think of the big sets right now. Don't worry about signatures or ultimates. Those sets are great. You'll learn that later. But when it comes to the homemaker and down, excuse me, when it comes to the homemaker set, if you look at the paring knife, the trimmer, and the spreader all the way to the very end, I want you to ask yourself this question. If you just visualize the homemaker +8, is there any pieces in that set that you personally have trouble selling? Meaning that, do you not sell those pieces often? Do you constantly have customers bringing up objections saying, you constantly hear people saying, I don't know if I'm going to use the forks. I don't know if I'm going to use the spreader. I don't know about the carving set, things of that nature. Usually the most common ones that come up are the spreader, the forks, the butcher knife, and the carving set. Those are the most popular ones. Typically, I would kind of open up the floor, but I'm on a time constraint, so I'm just going to do the main ones for you. Okay. So selling the spreader is really easy for you guys who have trouble with that. I go through the paring knife, I go through the trimmer, and then when I go to the spreader, this is how I promote it. Say, Mrs. Jones, what I love about the spatula spreader is I treat it more like a knife spreader. It's double bladed, it's got a sharp side and a dull side, and it's paper thin. So you can scoop, you can spread, you can slice all with one knife. It's great for sandwiches, pies, brownies, casseroles, and lasagnas. And it's really great if you ever do avocado. My wife does avocado toast all the time. So she'll use the sharp side to cut the avocado open. She'll use the dull side, take the pit out. She'll slice it and scoop it, and then she'll spread it afterwards. It's pretty awesome. It's actually one of our best knives that we sell. If you do that demo in that way for your customer, it's going to be very hard for people at the end saying, I would never use that. By the way, I'm not saying they're going to use the knives every day. That's not why people buy sets at Cutco. By the way, that's not why girls buy shoes all the time. My wife has 50 pairs of shoes in the closet. I tell her all the time, I don't know if you need this many shoes. And you know what she tells me? I don't have enough shoes. I need more of them. And the reality is that all the guys on the call probably like shaking their head. They're like, I understand it, man. I don't get it. But then my wife turns around, she looks at my Xbox in the other room. She's like, why do you have like 100 games in there? I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. So the idea is making sure to understand this. People don't buy sets of knives because they use every single piece in it. They buy sets of knives because there's some you can use every day, some you're going to use every once in a while, and some you're going to use a few times a year. But this isn't a set that you're going to buy it and then replace it in 2 years. You're going to buy it once and then you're done with it. That's it. And I guarantee they'll figure out uses for the knives as time goes on. Forks. So Miss Jones, what I love about the forks is that they're almost as sharp as our knives. They're like little Wolverine claws. So whenever you do pickles, cherries, olives out of the jar, they're obviously great for that. But what I find they're really good for is for shredding meat. So if you do shredded chicken, pulled pork, tri-tip, steaks, anything like that, you can take both forks out and you can actually shred the meat just with those, clean them off and put them right back into your block. What I like about them too is they're sturdy enough to where you can support about a 50 pounds worth of meat without breaking. Do you realize how little objections I get about forks now that I do that with my demo? If you just mention the simple fact, guys, we live in Texas. Like most people do some sort of shredded meat of some sort. My wife's family is all from Mexico. They do shredded chicken like all the time. And so the idea is making sure to let them know they're almost as sharp as our knives, and you can treat them like little claws and you can shred the meat, clean them, and put them back in your block. It's really hard for people to say, I won't ever use the forks once they realize the other things it's good for. The butcher knife and the carving set, I link those together. So here's how I promote them. Because again, a carving set you're not going to use every day, but the reality is that's okay. You have a carving set for when you need it. But here's how I promote them. After I finish the slicer about bread and all that stuff, I go right into the butcher knife and the carving set. So here's how it sounds. Real quick, Miss Jones, before I show you our last ones, do you guys ever barbecue every once in a while? You'll notice how I say barbecue every once in a while. I don't say, do you barbecue? I say, do you barbecue every once in a while? The reason why I'm saying that is I don't want customers to think, do I barbecue every day? That's not what we're asking. Sometimes customers will think that. So if they say no, then they feel like they don't need that because they're not going to be able to justify buying those pieces. Does that make sense so far? So I just asked that key question. Hey, do you guys barbecue every once in a while? And we're in Texas. What do you think most people say? Yeah, we do that sometimes. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, these next ones here are actually the barbecue knives. So let me show you the butcher knife first. And then I do the script, and then I go to the carving set and I do the script. So nothing really changes from what you guys are already doing. I just have that one tidbit of that one question that says, hey, do you guys barbecue sometimes? Now it's all different, because if you just show them a butcher knife without asking, most people are not going to feel like they're going to use it every day. If you just show them a carving set, they're going to think, I'm only going to use that during Thanksgiving. But if you frame it right by asking that question, now the tone is totally different. Now they see reasons why they should have those pieces, because they won't use them every day, but they will use them when they need them. Have it, not need it. That's the attitude. Everyone good so far? Let me get a show of thumbs real quick. Cool. All right. So, by the way, it's like a pop quiz. I'm basically scanning to see who's paying attention and who's not, or who I have to call out. So, good deal. So, let's go ahead and keep going to our last part here. I do have one line in there as well, which, by the way, I realized I don't think I shared the link for my talk here this whole time. So, I'm going to go ahead and share that right now. So, if you guys would like to click that, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to go ahead and continue on here as we go. Let me shrink that down a little bit. There we go. All right. So, I did put a line in there that I feel like is very powerful. No matter how good you are at names and uses, every once in a while, you're going to have a customer that can't wrap their mind around the idea of having a fork or a spreader or something. If you still have a customer, now how much in your power you do a good job of names and uses, I still get it sometimes. So whenever I do get it, I learned this line from another top rep in Minnesota named Seth Kinzer. He's great. You guys hopefully get to meet him someday. And it's such a simple line, but it works very well. So if I have a customer that says, I really love this set, but can I buy it without that one piece? Who here's gotten that before? I want to buy this set, but without that one piece. Well, you know what the easiest way to respond to that with is just like so. Yeah, absolutely, Mrs. Jones, you can totally do that. But just so you know, quote, even if you feel like you won't use that one knife, it's still a better deal to buy it as a set and giving it away to someone else versus breaking it up and buying the set piece by piece. You guys realize that, right? If they buy a homemaker set all pieced out, it's a little over $200 more. It's a little over $1,500 to do that. If they buy it as a set, like as the item number itself, it's $200 less. So if they want to take out one spatula spreader for $75, it's literally going to cost them about roughly $150 more to buy the same set, but with one less knife. By the way, they don't get the free cutting board. And also, by the way, they don't get that sharpener either. Cool. Customers forget about that stuff, so you have to subtly remind them if they're really fixated on buying a homemaker set or a galley or whatever, but there's one or two knives they feel like they won't use. It's literally a better deal to buy the set, throw the spreader in the garbage can, and then versus breaking up and buying it piece by piece. Ever since I learned that, by the way, I have the upgrade I did today. I had a customer's like, well, can I do this? But I don't know if I'm going to use this knife and that knife. And I'm like, in all honesty, Miss Jones, you can totally do it without those pieces. But typically, if you're not going to use one of those two of those pieces, it's still a better deal to buy it as a set versus and literally giving those two knives to your sister, because she said she wanted to buy knives for her sister someday. Literally giving those two knives to your sister versus breaking it up and trying to buy it all piece by piece like you've been doing in the past. Like she bought the set once and she's bought a few pieces here and there over time, and she realized how much more expensive it is. So when I told her that way, she looked at her husband, and the husband was like, I'm good with it if you are, honey, whatever you want to do. And she's like, I want to do the upgrade. And I was like, cool, high five. And then we were done. That's it. That was how you handle it. So make sure to save that line in your cheat sheet. Last section here before I run out of time. Rapport is key to closing big. So here's one of the main things I always want to make sure that you remember. Customers are going to like Cutco. I am never worried about customers liking Cutco once I finish my demo. That is irrelevant. I'm not worried about it. What I am worried about is, do they like me enough to where they trust that what they're about to buy is something that's worth it? Guys, it's not like $5 Girl Scout cookies or a $20 charity gift card for like a football team or something like that. This is real money. So you want to make sure that customers feel very confident that what they're about to buy is a good decision. Now, you guys all sell Cutco, so you guys already know it is, but they don't know that yet. So you have to make sure that you have great rapport built with them. The way I always taught my reps back in the day building rapport, I know your demo tells you to do 5 to 10 minutes, and that's great for when you're brand new with like your family and friends and stuff. But over time, you got to start increasing that number. Guys, I spend 15 to 30 minutes building rapport with people before I even bring out a Cutco brochure or a Cutco book or a Cutco knife or something, or even talk about Cutco really. I try to spend 15 to 30 minutes doing that with them because, again, I am confident in my demo that they're going to want to buy at the end. Just how much they want to buy is going to be based on how much they trust me that it's worth it. Some people will buy a couple of knives just to try it out and see if they like it. Some people will just take the plunge and buy a set off the get-go because they like them, they need good knives, and they trust that what they're about to buy is something really good from you. Okay, so here's what I would tell you. Some of you guys probably listen to 15 to 30 minutes of Rapport. You're like, what the hell do you talk to people about that for so long? By the way, guys, I was not a very social person when I first started. It was a skill I really had to work on when I was brand new. So what I would tell you is this: play the 20 questions game with them. The 20 questions game is where your goal is just to ask them 20 questions about themselves before you show them Cutco. And by the way, it's going to be easier than what you think it is. Where are you guys from? We're from Minnesota. What part of Minnesota? We're from Minneapolis. That's awesome. What brings you guys down to Texas? We came here for work. My husband's an engineer and he got offered a job over here in Houston. Hey, that's great. Like, what do you get? What do you do for a living? It's like, oh, well, I actually teach part-time over at the local school here and there. That's awesome. Do your kids go to school? Like, where do you have children and all that stuff? And you can go down this rabbit hole for a long time. I will tell you, it's a learned skill. You have to practice it. So I would recommend partnering with someone and make sure to role play with them, like other people from your office and whatnot. Use this week to practice building rapport so you actually get to learn about them. And also, it's going to make you better when you build rapport on your demos with customers. Most people don't get a lot of time to spend time like talking about themselves or their life in general. So it's really refreshing when someone listens to them. So here's what I tell you too: good dates and bad dates. I'm sure you guys have all had your fair share of good dates and bad dates, right? Have you ever noticed that the bad dates are the ones where the other person is kind of just talking about themselves the entire time always, and they're not really communicating with you or getting to know you that well? Those usually are not the best dates to go on. Now, you also have the good dates where that person is very personable. They're asking about your life. Where are you from? Where do you go to school? Why do you do that? Why do you do this? And maybe ask you about your goals or whatever it may be. But you'll notice that you tend to gravitate towards people that express an interest in you. And so the idea is one of the easiest ways to get people to feel comfortable around you is just you asking questions about themselves and letting them share, because they don't get to do that a lot. So a couple of last notes here for you. Like me, know me, trust me, pay me. So you'll see that on the notes too. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard this, but I want to hit it a little bit harder right now. Customers have to like you before they want to get to know you. Once people get to know you, they feel comfortable with you and they begin to trust you. And once people trust you, then they'll feel comfortable buying from you, which is pay me. By the way, this rule doesn't apply to just Cutco. You know that thing we talk about all the time, skills for life? This applies to any job you get after Cutco. Some of you guys are going to be here for a summer job. That's cool. This is the longest summer job I've ever had. So some of you guys are going to be here for like 4 or 5 years of college. That was my wife. We met selling Cutco way back in the day. And she sold Cutco to make tuition payments for St. Edward's. It's an expensive school in Austin. She had scholarships, but it's hella expensive still. So she had to pay for her tuition because her family doesn't have any money. That's why she sold Cutco. And so the thing is that I would tell you is this: when she worked with us for a few years, she did assistant manager work for a few years and worked during the summers and stuff like that. When she was applying for an internship at a hospital here in Austin, there were people that I think she said it was over 500 applicants of college kids that applied for this internship, and they took 2 people. When they went through and did their one-on-one interviews with everybody, she was one of the 2 that got it. She was very lucky. She worked with them for about a year, and then when she graduated, she got a job. Her salary out the door was like 62 grand. That's pretty good for, a college graduate right off the get-go. I would say that doesn't suck. And so what I would tell you is this: she told me that her interview was about 30 minutes long. Over 20 minutes of it was them talking to her, just trying to get to know her. They already knew she had good grades. They already knew she knew what she had to do. So everyone, by the way, there's a lot of people you're going to graduate with that all have great GPAs. Do you know how you stand out? Being good at freaking talking to people, having people skills. And so many people, and she has this job, she's had it for like 6 years now and stuff. She loves it, but she's by far the youngest person in her department. And the main thing is that it baffles her every single day. Like maybe at least once a week, she'll come home and just be like, I don't understand how grown adults don't know how to talk to people because she was used to being in Cutco through her whole college life. So she learned how to build rapport and communicate. And most adults sometimes just simply don't learn those skills. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So use it to your advantage. If you want to be an engineer, one of the easiest ways to get a job is not just be smart, but being good at communicating those ideas to people that are not engineers. And there's a lot of stories in Cutco about people that are like that, which I don't have time to explain today. Here's the last thing. Sharing goals will tilt your customers into bigger purchases. People will buy Cutco just by looking at it, but they will buy more Cutco, again, if they trust you and they want to buy more. Now, I was really weird about sharing goals when I was new in my first couple years, because I wanted people to buy Cutco, not because of me. I wanted them to buy it because it was a good product. So I was one of the weird people about sharing goals and stuff. But many years ago, I changed my mindset on that because I started realizing that people wanted to buy more Cutco anyways. They were using me as the excuse, actually not me, they were using my goals as the excuse to justify buying something that they already wanted to buy in the first place. meaning that people usually, when they see Cutco, want to buy lots of it. And sometimes only spend a couple $100 versus a couple $1,000 or $1,000 plus, because they try to like control themselves. But the funny thing is that whenever you share your goals with your customers and you get them really tied into what you're trying to do, you'll start noticing that people will justify buying more stuff just to help, quote unquote, help you out. Guys, people don't buy $1,000 of knives just to be nice. They will buy more stuff though because they want it. It's on their wish list for later, but they're so tied into what you're trying to do that they want to help you that they'll go ahead and do it now versus later. I've had so many customers over the years that I mentioned, like, we were intending only to buy this, but we're going to go ahead and buy this because it helps you toward your goals. And anyways, we've talked about getting the shears. We've talked about getting a bigger block, so we might as well just do it now. That happens a lot if you tie them into your goals, which you guys have had a whole talk on that earlier today from what I understand. So make sure you're sharing your goals with your customers, guys. I will buy lots of Girl Scout cookies from the girl that shares her goals with me. I will not buy a lot of Girl Scout cookies from the girls that sit behind the tables. The easiest thing to always remember this, and so I'll leave you guys with, you got to ask yourself, what kind of Girl Scout are you? All right. I know it's going to, just bear with me. When it comes to Girl Scouts, you really got the ones that are behind the tables and the ones that are in front. The ones that are behind the tables usually sit back there. Moms do most of the talking. They do the selling because Girl Scout cookies are really easy to sell at this point, right? I'll walk up, I'll buy 1 or 2 boxes and move on with my life. This one day, a couple years ago, I bought those boxes and then we finished. I went to lunch with my wife, and it was about an hour and a half later or so, we left, and there was a different Girl Scout with a different table that was set up in front of this store that wasn't there earlier. I came out and this girl just popped out of nowhere and she's like, "Hi, I'm so-and-so with Girl Scout, blah, 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 blah. Do you want to buy some Girl Scout cookies?" And I said, "Oh man, you're breaking my heart. I would totally do that, but I literally just bought some. I literally just bought some a little over an hour ago. I'm so sorry." And you know what most Girl Scouts would have done? "Oh, okay, no problem. Have a good day." But you know what this Girl Scout did, which gained my respect a lot? She said, "Oh, that's awesome. Which ones didn't you buy?" I was like, "Oh, you're a good one. I'm excited." And so she pulled me over to her table, and guess what? She was with another Girl Scout, and guess what the friend was doing? Sitting behind the table and just taking orders and not really seeming excited to be there, honestly. But this girl, the hustler girl, she was out in front of the table and she was showing me all the boxes. And I ended up buying way too many. My wife was like, "Okay, we'll buy 1." I'm the one that's like, add a 0 to that. We're buying 10 because this girl is awesome. I want to make sure this happens. By the way, do I need Girl Scout cookie boxes? Well, I say yes, but most people would say no. But the idea is making sure that as we go through this, I justify buying more boxes, not just to help her out, but I used her as the reason why I bought more boxes than I wanted. Well, I wanted to buy those boxes, what I meant to say, but I bought more of them because of her. So share your goals with your customers, get them tied in. You got to ask yourself, am I going to be the Girl Scout that's behind the table, just kind of taking orders, or I'm going to be in front of the table that's really going after my goals? You got to be hungry for it, y'all. If you want to go after your first 10K push, it took me a few tries to get after it. You have to give your very best, just like McCall was talking about a little bit earlier. Make sure you check yourself. Make sure you give it your best. Use this information from today. Hopefully that'll help you sell a few more block sets during the push week, and that's my time. So that's what I got for you, Kathy.